The PlayStation released in Japan on December 3rd, 1994, unleashing one of the largest behemoths in the gaming space. With that in mind, I think it's time to look at all the titles that came alongside it, seeing if they made players happy with their purchase, or if they gave gamers the urge to drink a bucket of gasoline, lighting up a smoke afterwards. And what better way is there to start than experiencing second to none fun with Mahjong? Unsurprisingly, I cannot read anything because I don't know how to transcribe this language on the fly, but it did not stop me from at least attempting to complete my goal. Who cares if I have no idea what I'm doing, what was happening, or how to play Mahjong? It does appear to be a very action-packed game though. These characters are slamming their hands down on the table when making a move using their club cracker sandwiches, while this barnyard game is taking place in a shadow duel arena. What other tabletop game could compete with this? All I need is a Yugi adjacent figure to come out and everything will come full circle. As I continuously cannonballed my pieces down, unsure if I was winning, I felt like if I carried on playing, some form of bad juju would start emanating from my screen and I was gonna summon a demon if one more table slam transpired. So I did have to stop Purple Shirt, Achilles, and Guile from creating a world-ending scenario in my home to give the other Mahjong game a whirl that has very goofy looking characters. A monkey with a conductor's hat, a pig wearing a fez, this humanoid bird creature fitted with a purple wig, and a guy. This iteration is far worse when it comes to quality. Going from game to game in this situation gives you the same feeling you get when you travel from a safe neighborhood to one where cars have missing wheels and houses are decorated with a locale-specific bullet hole pattern on the side. If I had to pick between the two, the previous Mahjong is an absolute animal, presumably still slaying it out in clubs everywhere 32 years later for fans of this game. I can't say I'm one. I just tapped out to go enjoy crime crackers. I cannot tell you what the crimes are or which brands of crackers are being used, but it's a very early day console first-person shooter title having this ancient tome of a combat style of where you need to press a button to activate your shooting mode, then drag your crosshair on screen, losing the ability to move forwards and backwards. This kerfuffle is one I'm not accustomed to, making me wish I spent more time throughout my life harvesting the innards of the PS1 library. It would have made this a much more lovely trek while swallowing Mountain Dew and Doritos, or at least I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing, according to all the nostalgia posts I endlessly have my eyes tainted with. There's nothing like diabetes and clogged arteries, right? That's not a joke either. If it helped me win in Crime Crackers, I would happily combine Gillette, Harry's, and Dollar Shave Club razors into the ultimate shaving machine, slicing years off my life after dunking a 2-ton bucket of nacho cheese tortilla chips down my throat, if it made this any easier. I was seriously trying my best to make my way through the catacombs, maneuvering around, handling these, what are honestly whack-ass controls, I'm not gonna lie. Trying to harness it would truly take a lot of time. I just don't understand why you cannot move forwards or backwards while in the shooting mode. It makes fighting enemies a genuine challenge, forcing you to waste all the healing items you scrounge up while you play. Adding on to this annoyance, Crime Crackers is very maze-like, where every area you enter looks exactly the same as the last, so trying to uncover the place you need to go is incredibly difficult. And once you finally do, you need to prepare yourself against a boss that might as well have stumbled out of a Tom and Jerry highlight reel, who grabs you by the ankle to twirl you around like a Neanderthal's rock sling. I had to tussle against Lloyd Garmadon, who's flying around, executing lunge hammer punches. I can hardly keep up with him, or let alone avoid his attacks because I can't move backwards while shooting. The guy was a living Dyson, blowing me away at every turn. It took me more tries than it should have to finally take him down. Nonetheless, I'm not gonna say Crime Crackers is curd shoveled up from a 300-year-old bomb shelter. It's more mediocre than anything else, suffering from the developers not knowing how to properly design a game on the new hardware that descended from the heavens onto their laps. A player could have had a decent time with this in 94, spelunking through their hallways, collecting goodie bags of items, shooting blue pumpkin seeds at enemies. In 2026 though, I think I'd rather dust off the big K Nux to box out a hornet's nest, becoming the wilderness version of Roy Jones Jr., than spending hours of my life on this. But hey, maybe there is a hidden underworld following for Crime Crackers that sees it as the epitome of greatness, where they use the whole of the disc for unholy practices. Nobody really knows. All I can say for myself is that it made me upset, which is the reason Neketsu Uyako was stirred up in the cauldron. The people need to have a beat-em-up game at their fingertips to alleviate any stress brought forth, since nothing makes people happier than getting a kill under their belt. These sorts of games were a staple of the 90s, having you rumble against armies of hooligans and even Benny the Cab cousins, while you run around getting your grubby mitts on a random assortment of items like necklaces or airplanes for points, if anyone actually gave a damn about getting a high score. What I do find strange about Neketsu though is how it doesn't really scream new hardware, next generation of gaming. It looks very reminiscent to Streets of Rage with the HUD and gameplay feel, but it's much slower overall. My heroic super soldier here apparently needs to oil up the bones before he storms down these off-the-goop ass assortment of levels. The first has us traversing down a normal looking area to immediately be tossed into the inside of a whale who casts an interior tsunami, sending us to the top of it to ride the big man across the ocean. We then fight a boss on his head. Upon killing him, we enter a theme park leading to a roller coaster that blows up when it reaches the end of its track, sending us to the inside of a flaming cavern. How do you even come up with this stuff? Is it a substance? Do you need to visit the famous ritualistic deep jungle shaman who keeps a crucified cow outside of his hut? I just want to know. Similar to Crime Crackers, I can't claim that Neketsu is terrible. It's another piece of the mediocrity pie recipe where you'd be better off playing a game that was already released on the previous generation. Although, I think I'd still rather gobble this up than wallow in the ghetto of Evolution Global, a title that is essentially a spin on SimCity that I didn't really have much interest in playing. I sat there pretending I was a god, slapping a couple buildings down on a canvas, wishing I was able to summon Bowser or various other world-ending hazards onto these poor citizens as I usually would. I'm sure this did hold gamers over who do enjoy these sorts of things, until it inevitably got its fudge packed by SimCity 2000 when that released a few years afterwards. Or if they got bored, they could have disregarded the whole city building Bob the Builder make pretend bullshit, leaving it in the dust entirely to go play what is quite literally one of those dollar store plastic maze toys. Except instead of a lifeless metal ball rolling around in the paper-thin plastic, we get Sonic traveling through different environments with a time limit sticking its barrel into his ear, ready to pull the trigger. If I had to guess as to why Tema Adventurous Ball in Giddy Labyrinth is a thing, it's probably here to be a flex, showing off fluid 3D graphics and animations so the Sony higher-ups could use it as a circle jerk to then spew out verbal diarrhea towards opposing companies, trying to make them feel like a worthless piece of trash. It's a possibility, but it wouldn't make much sense considering how Ridge Racer is also a part of the original stack of games, being a far superior technological specimen for the suits to cream over. Ridge Racer is one of the all-time classic racing titles where you select from whichever automobile you decide fits best to bring the arcade action home, which is great since that's what a lot of people wanted during this time period. When they'd go to an arcade, the games were more vibrant, colorful, and smooth versus what they'd experience at home, so having this gave gamers something to be excited about. Plus, having what is essentially an arcade title in your own home means you don't need to go to an arcade anymore, touching buttons with Dorito dust cum smeared all over them. For the 90s, having a title of this magnitude barging through the front door is nothing to scoff at. Of course, now, graphically, it looks like third world country sewage, watching cars turn into bread loafs when they're outside of sneezing distance, and the cars control like absolute shit, with the ice skating rink-ass road slipping and sliding all over the place. But it did start a franchise that inevitably became beloved by fossils everywhere, so that's wonderful wonderful to see. What a fucking gem of a launch title. A sentiment that can also be said about mispronunciation the game. It's definitely not a next generation bigwig for the PlayStation. You just got a 2D shooter that's kinda weird. I mean, what are we really doing battling a boat that has a cat head? Or playing as a pig named Michael? It has a very unorthodox design, some of it even changing how certain levels are played, like having you blow away cookie walls to reach a mechanism gripping two piping bags with miniature people in the center of it. Why this is a boss is anyone's guess. Nonetheless, I do believe the 2D shooter enjoyers of society would have a genuinely good time with Gokujo. The artistic shits are fun and goofy, with the difficulty not falling into the Jake's Law category. A few of these levels were seriously a diaper rash, closing the kinda depressing lineup for Japan, honestly. If I was a young lord who got a PlayStation as a gift back in '94, I would have been happy purely due to the fact I got the shiny new toy, but if I got anything that wasn't Ridge Racer or Gokujo as a game to play on it, the taste probably would have been soured, and without hesitation, I would have taken the fattest swig of the easiest poisonous concoction I could create. So this leaves the Western countries to swoop in and pick up the fallen pieces, using the unparalleled high 80s IQ, building a fortress of gaming solitude. The PS1 hit the streets a year after Japan in September of 1995, with Street Fighter the movie the game being a standout for me. Mainly because it's just an interesting phenomenon to make a game, then make a movie about that video game, finally creating a video game about the movie based on the video game. It's a moment that would make anyone soil themselves. Apparently, the original arcade version is a lot worse than the home console version. I can't really say for certain. Attempting to enjoy yourself with these things can be borderline impossible, thanks to how horribly programmed they are with their AI. The carved out tree stumps had a singular goal, which was to have you open up your wallet, emptying your cash, your change, and each ounce of lint or dust found within, giving you a personal VIP ticket for a mouth-to-pavement meet and greet. From what I played of it, I was ready to hang up the boots after a short time frame because I don't know the skill, also known as forced exploits, you need to use to win. I genuinely did not want to play this goop any longer than I needed to. However, with the PS1 version, you are able to have a solid whirl thanks to the difficulty not consistently doing its hardest to cave your ribcage in with a club. It uses the same style of digitized actors Mortal Kombat used in the early days, so it does have somewhat of a charm in that regard. Even if a few of the characters are not looking too good, Blanca with his nasty Chucky ass is a pretty disgusting creature to have taint your eyesight, but if you disregard that and just look at this as a Street Fighter game overall, I still don't know if I can fully say this is the move. The core gameplay is slightly clunkier than if you were playing the real thing, and your ultimate frustration will undoubtedly be the constant slowdown. It would be an honor to be informed on why there is so much lag during fights on the next generation that was 30 years ago. Was it supposed to be for dramatic effect because movie? If that does happen to be the case, you can eat crow for that. All it makes me want to do is wrestle an eagle. I hate it. This hogwash slightly halts the enjoyment you can have playing your 85% baked fighter. I really do wonder how the hardcore pipe cleaners coming off of Super Turbo felt about the movie The Game when they got their hands on it in '95. I can only speak for myself, but the more I play it, the more I have the urge to get rid of it to go play Street Fighter 2 instead. To be fair though, if I got it at launch along with Ridge Racer, you couldn't complain too much. It's a playable fighter that functions. Besides, you could have gotten Power Serve 3D Tennis instead, a title that has you select your clay figure to enter the battlegrounds wielding a racket that you cannot see in the first person view the game starts off in. It's seriously unplayable until you change the angle. You can hardly tell how far you are away from the ball, so you need to shut that shit off to make 3D tennis be still almost unplayable. Even with the newfound knowledge of understanding your distance from the ball, you're still left dealing with learning how to handle the ghost orb flying around. Unless my opponent is a living cartoon character, smacking the ball at such a force, causing it to erupt in flames I cannot see, hitting the ball seems to be completely random. Your time timing needs to be pixel perfect, otherwise the thing will travel straight through your racket. I was basically forced to play doubles to put a hacker on my team who can dunk on my opposition. I always find it to be a treat taking a gander at a game that is so bare bones, having only 3 areas to play in, yet the core gameplay is completely worthless, shaping a waste of money in disc form. It's a sad-ass snack that would for sure be left on the table for the bacteria and mold to infiltrate, slowly colonizing a society of filth. Go send 3D Tennis on a one-way trip to the dump, then go pick yourself up a copy of Raiden Project. A Bone Town 2-in-1 combo steal of a disc, frying up a double pack of a legendary 2D shooter franchise that certain corners may say is the Dark Souls of 2D shooters. You fly through levels, struggling to comprehend what is going on around you, cheese balls are clogging up the screen, you die repeatedly until you spend an ungodly amount of your life putting it straight against the cheese grater, shedding years off of it, learning the ins and outs of each stage. It's not a joke how much of a challenge not only these, but all the Raiden entries are. These games are fucked, while still being a good time since they are balanced fairly. It's probably the best way to design one of these titles, really. If you don't, you'd be in the Blast Entertainment Phoenix Games slums, wasting your time with food grime caught in a sink strainer. I'm positive a 95 gamer would have been elated to receive a hood classic like this for their arsenal, as long as they had some variety. A potion consisting of grueling 2D action, packed up with rollerblading down a street, pounding on local racers, racking up a fat hospital bill for their reward of participating in the modern-day Pan-Hellenic Games, thanks to ESPN Extreme Games, is what all gamers ask for. Initially, I kinda assumed this would be a biking game of sorts, but it's a lot more expansive than that, apparently. It's a biker, a rollerblader, and skateboarder's wet dream, where everyone is tearing down the road, racing for an unknown grand prize. Maybe they're doing it for the love of the game, I don't know. I just hope they get some prize money to put it into their facial features. It's a shame we can't have a real-life version of ESPN Extreme Games. Seriously, if you took 50 people, then cleared off various roads, having them race alongside the paper coliseum, trying to knock each other on their ass, viewership would skyrocket and cheese would be made. Who wouldn't be entertained by it? Are we not blessed with it because the video game version isn't remotely close to enjoyable? It turns into a month-old baguette after 10 minutes. As you repeatedly wheel down the road, your happiness will fade quickly, leaving you with only one option: racking up as many murder charges as possible to become the most prolific serial killer in ESPN history. A common theme between Extreme Games fans and Plane fans, at least that's what Air Combat has me believe. A title that is exactly what it says. There is air, and you do combat. It's another spectacle of early day 3D console gaming, giving journalists, onlookers, and investors a stiffy. I don't believe I've ever had as much fun as I did here a single time in my life. The circumstance made me want to have a jam, specifically an NBA Jam Tournament Edition. What is one of the most beloved sports games in the history of balls? It's a fast-paced Sugar Rush basketball title where you're blessed to watch cartoonish, freakazoid, crackhead-styled iterations of your favorite players running around, jumping 500 feet in the air, torpedoing themselves into the backboard, slamming their ball in the hoop. If you've played NBA Jam, you're getting that exact game you've played before, with a few new features included. The only frustration I had with it was how the AI teammate seemed to be a paint-huffing champion on the side. They didn't want to do anything helpful half the time, forcing me to be a one-man army. I don't know if I was expected to go into the kitchen, cooking up a trenbolone sandwich to turn one of these goofballs into a member of the Monstars roster, allowing them to fight up their mental mountain, but I have no way of accomplishing that task. Instead, I can only try my best to wrap this polar plunge back around to Action 52 with Total Eclipse Turbo. It's yet another space shooter set fully in the 3D realm, finally fulfilling the next generation nugget, functioning surprisingly surprisingly well with minimal lag. I'm not gonna say it's the embodiment of pleasure that rippled the whole industry, making other publishers have the urge to clone it. You just fly around, shooting buildings, twirling in circles, scrapping against bosses that shoot meatballs that are impossible to avoid. It's what gamers needed. I can't hate it if what they're doing is messing about with what they're given. At least it didn't age like unbrushed teeth, words that cannot be said about Zero Divide. It appears with this, the higher powers decided to put their brains to the test, giving the streets an early 3D fighter for consoles that most likely had society tearing their shirts, happy to hear a Tekken-type game is finally able to be played at home. A vision that is completely reasonable for 95. It's just sad for those individuals the quality of Zero Divide is not fully what they expected. Look, I'm sure back then Zero Divide would have been passable for the basic marvel of how there's a whole new style of game rammed into their eye sockets, watching big robotic monsters trying to turn each other into nuts and bolts. But fuck, the fighting is so clunky and incredibly frustrating to play, feeling like you're stomping through melted cement when jiggying around the arena. Also, when enemies knock you down, it takes 400 years to stand back up. Another heater tossed in your direction is how the controls are set up. Rather than all the face buttons being bound to an attack, X and circle are your punch and kick, while square and triangle are both block. Not sure why this choice was made, but it's very awkward to handle since block isn't in a position used by many other games by default, and I wouldn't really say Zero Divide is worth accustoming your brain to it. The game just doesn't make you feel like a well-oiled machine, which is understandable while looking at older 3D fighting titles. Whenever you see an early dump in a medium that hasn't had all the ounces of its nutrients extracted into a bucket ready to recycle for later, the chances of it having the scent of a fat slab of sulfur is practically guaranteed. So it makes you wonder how it compares to the Battle Arena, the other 3D fighter the PlayStation 1 had at launch. That's essentially a predecessor to Soul Calibur, with all the characters wielding weaponry, performing at different speeds, creating a more unique dynamic for a fighter, letting you choose how fast, slow, or how long your range is. It's definitely nice from the perspective of having a new experience, but very similar issues persist from Zero Divide, with how the entirety of that said experience is drooped out of a homemade slime jar. The characters behave like hand puppets possessed by Zozo and his cronies living in the Luigi board. It's a hairy predicament no one would enjoy themselves with in 2056. Picking the definitive fighter between the two is a tough one. If I had a bazooka aimed at my head, I'd probably give it to Battle Arena, only by a pubic hair. Of course, 3D fighters were not the only genre in their infancy. As we saw with Crime Crackers earlier, first-person shooters were slowly stomping their foot down thanks to Doom unzippering its pants a few years earlier. That's why we have Kalik, the DNA Imperative, that was released as the Western launch shooter title that thankfully doesn't require you to activate a crosshair mode to shoot. So already it plays a lot more fluidly than Crime Crackers did, thanks to having the ability to move in any direction you want while dicking down opposing robots. Why we need to fight them in tight corridors where you can hardly avoid their shots is a different question though. When you enter the firing line, avoiding damage can be impossible, and with the limited healing items you're able to scavenge up, it'll make your attempt at each level more irritating than it should be. On top of needing to deal with that, there's also a battery meter you are required to pay attention to that slowly deteriorates. When it's gone, you die, which is a bit strange. We're in like 2179. Why are we still using batteries? Shouldn't we be controlling a higher powered cyborg of some kind? Whatever the reasoning for including this was, it does add another layer of frustration, ensuring you go out of your way to locate charging stations and use them when needed as you're trying to solve your kind of puzzles. I'm assuming they wanted to attempt emulating a similar style to Doom, since having semi-puzzle type levels along alongside ripping enemies' throats out is what made Doom the fake natural of the gaming space. The only issue for this game is that the mark was missed by 15 miles for both aspects. Almost every enemy I ran into was stationary, hardly putting up a fight, and the quote-unquote puzzle solving is you traversing rooms that are borderline copy-pasted, changing the colors of buttons or pressing switches. It's very bland from a gameplay perspective and also visually. Kalik the DNA Imperative is a title I initially felt was going to be a behemoth, a 12-course meal, letting me eat a whole feast with another on the way, but it just wasn't. You play it for 15 minutes, and the amusement dissipates. Nothing is truly gripping or enticing about what you're doing. I find it a challenge to believe anyone would see this as a hidden gem, a doctors everywhere hate this game sort of deal. Maybe if they put protein on the cover, that would make the monkeys be up in arms ready to fight to the death over it. Until then, that's not gonna happen. Now, this obviously doesn't mean simplicity is a bad thing necessarily. It really just depends on the style of game you're talking about. Rayman is a great example of simplicity done well. You got a 2D platformer that has you windmilling your arm around to clobber various entities attempting to stop you on your quest of breaking Christmas ornaments imprisoned in cells, all while acquiring new abilities on your conquest, using them to deal with bullshit platforming that is a needle in the urethra. I've never played a Rayman game before, but I did not think it was going to be an arduous expedition. I was assuming it would be dog-walked like a majority of the platformers that exist on our planet, plus with the cartoony aesthetic, no one would have the impression they're gonna become nothing more than a slobbered-on bone dropped from a hound's mouth. As you continue playing Rayman, thoughts of wanting to swallow dish soap will slowly enter your brain, which is great. It's amazing when video games make you feel that way. It helps with mental perseverance. We need more games that increase blood pressure levels, having vessels pop in players' skulls. Thank you, Rayman, for being gracious enough to give me a headache after 45 minutes. It's a feeling I would stomach over a plethora of the other PS1 launch titles, honestly. A majority of the day one games are very bare bones, getting stale after a short time frame. And yeah, I get it, the hardware's capabilities was alien technology in comparison to what was used previously, so naturally the first few titles were doomed to be experimental adjacent, not coming off as bombshells that would be remembered in the end times. The only ones I would consider actually good would probably be Rayman, Ridge Racer, Raiden Project, Gokujo, maybe Street Fighter the movie if you really wanted to be generous. The rest are all mediocre at best, creating a pretty rotten lineup. Realistically, if you didn't get a PlayStation 1 immediately, you weren't missing out on much. It wasn't until Twisted Metal, Crash Bandicoot, Need for Speed, and Spyro started entering the battleground that the console started looking like a must-buy. Even when the console went over to Europe a few weeks after the US, a large portion of their games were ones that already came out, so not much changed in that department until the gears of the industry had grease dumped onto them. But I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts on these things. Did you think any of the games were the most nut-busting, great experiences the world has ever seen for a console's release? Or do you see it as a snooze fest? Please let me know down in the comments. Big ups to all of our channel members who go above and beyond each and every month, generously supporting the channel even further. If you would like to join them to get early access to content, hit the join button right next to the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, take very good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again in the next video.